Hello and welcome to Forgotten Frights. I am Josh. I'm sitting here alone today. Adam is not here because I am currently reintroducing an older episode from a previous podcast. That previous podcast is the Vintage Talk Bag, in which we reviewed arts, media, and all sorts of stuff. So I'm pulling these conversations because I think they're pretty good. And they're about older films, so they fit right within the genre. So the only thing that's really different is that we used a 5-star rating system at the very end of the podcast. That is writing, acting, sight, sound, and recommend. But other than that, everything is pretty much the same. So I hope you enjoy this episode of Forgotten Frights. Josh, and I'm sitting here with my brother Adam. And today on the podcast, we'll be discussing the 1962 horror anthology film Tales of Terror, starring Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, Basil Rathbone, and Debra Paget. Here's the trailer.
Every drop of blood feels the freezing paralysis of fear, almost stopping your heart, as Edgar Allan Poe unfolds his tales of terror.
You will meet the master of the mansion, who loved and protected his wife with the strength of a supernatural love, even beyond life itself.
I am in command here. You will do as I say. I shall take what I desire. Your body and your soul if I demand it.
Enough! Help! Help!
Then you'll enjoy the Black Cat's sardonically humorous tale. It all started at the Vintners Convention, where the lover of wine met the professional wine taster and introduced him to his wife, a darling who delighted in dalliance.
Cuckold story.
What kind of a man are you anyway? Make love to my wife and doesn't even talk to me.
You're insane!
That may be, but very clever.
Help! Help! Help!
In this monstrous mausoleum of the living, you will witness fury far worse than a woman scorned. The fury of a dead woman's jealousy.
Triumphant trilogy of terror. All right, so that was a trailer for the 1962 film Tales of Terror. Did you find it? A new introduction to the podcast is me playing the trailer of the movie. Do you find that to be taxing?
No. I think it kind of gives people an idea of, what kind of movie it's going to be. I mean, this is obviously an older type movie, and it's going to have a lot of dramatic musical interludes and whatnot. I like it a lot.
Cool. So before we get to the review, how's it going, Adam?
Very good.
Good?
Very good.
Staying alive?
All things considering, very good.
We'll get to that at some point. So you were on the previous episode, or a previous episode, where in which we discussed, what was that, 64 or earlier, Black Sabbath.
Boris Karloff.
With Boris Karloff. And we're kind of going, moving ahead. I called you an anthology aficionado. I think you just have an appreciation for I guess anthologies in general.
Yes, it helps if I've watched the movie in the last 6 months.
I just did an episode on Masters of the Universe, and I'm pretty sure AJ was like, I've seen the movie enough times. I don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just gonna do that. We'll take that offside. But yeah, so it had kind of. He had seen it enough times. It worked out fine, but it's like, it helps to go watch the movie before you go before you go talk about it.
Yep.
I think it's up there for downloads for the episode. So for what people seem to like to download it and listen to it. So I guess going outside of the anthology, what is it? what made you choose this anthology, Tales of Terror, over, say, the 100,000 other anthologies?
More than anything, I'm drawn to Vincent Price and his acting. For whatever that is, I don't know. I still don't know if he's a good actor. I love to watch him act.
Yeah.
He's very flowy and very dramatic, but I love it. I absolutely love it. I can watch. He eats the scenery every single time he's in a scene. I just love to watch him.
I think, and we can, we'll definitely discuss it in the third segment where we break down the movie using the vintage talk bag rubric, acting in general, because, Vincent Price is such a, he's obviously an iconic figure of horror, but he's also iconic because the way he talks, he's kind of got like a, very noticeable. It's like he doesn't sound like Christopher Walken, but he's like a Christopher Walken type person. Yeah. It's like, that actor because his voice is,
sure.
I do love frogs' legs.
Yes,
that kind of, it's very particular.
Yes.
But I think maybe one thing that's overlooked is his physicality and the way he's definitely like a stage actor.
Yes, absolutely.
And you get it's very clear through Tales of Terror that is the case.
Yes.
So with the first segment, let's walk through the synopsis of the film and inform the listening audience of the story if they're not familiar with it, or just remind them if they already know about the movie. And I think we can start in the first segment of Tales of Terror. Which is Morella. That's correct. Much like Black Sabbath, it begins with a Vincent Price narration. Boris Karloff obviously kicked off Black Sabbath. He's sorely missed in this. Yeah. I really enjoyed seeing Boris Karloff, be befuddling and putz around.
Right.
But this is different and interesting in its own way because they kind of do this like artistic. I don't know what do you even call it. It's like an artistic
with the heart beating.
So there's like an aesthetic quality.
Yes.
Before each a very noticeable and unique one. There's like I think this one has just like the heart beating once it starts.
Yes.
Let me see if.
I'll say with those
I didn't get a chance because I would have otherwise had to pull up the full movie. But there's like a heart beating when it starts. And you were going to say something.
When Vincent Price's narration for each story, not to get off on too much of a tangent, it's sort of like Rod Serling's best narrations for The Twilight Zone. They're very short, they're concise, and they give the viewer enough information to know what they're getting into. It's a nice touch, I think. It's much like Boris Karloff's. I think Karloff he brought a little more to it. Like he was very much trying to scare the audience.
He was like the physicality of I was gonna say Rod Serling, but that's not quite right. But he had the physical appearance. He was in a suit.
Yes, he looks like a corpse.
He does. He does. Yeah, he played the corpse really well.
He did, yep.
This one, it's Vincent Price kicking it off. I don't think he's like overly punny. He's just like, here's an Edgar Allan Poe story about a dead lady. Yeah. Or is she alive? Right. And then a do-do-do-do.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got Morella. There is Lenora Locke.
That's the daughter, yeah.
So she travels to Vincent, and Lenora Locke is played by Maggie Pierce, and she arrives at Vincent Price's manor. And
I think his character is just known as Locke.
Yes, that sounds right. Yep.
Yes.
And she arrives. The house is in a terrible state.
Yes.
It's there's cobwebs everywhere. One of the things, one of the threads that runs through the anthology is that there's a lot of red.
Yes.
Those cobwebs are covering like red candelabras.
Licorice candles.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are. Everything's like blood red or like a candy apple red, I guess.
Yep.
Very striking. She shows up. Everything's kind of covered in webs. The house is in shambles, which must be thematically linked to Vincent Price himself, because when she meets him, he is also in shambles.
Yes.
And begins to consume liquor at a rate that's like an episode of Deadwood.
Yeah,
he's just slamming glasses of bourbon, or maybe Boris Karloff's drink of choice as well. Was just drinking his ass off.
Yes,
so,
and the funny thing is that he seems like he's been in a pretty bad way for 26 years.
Yeah,
and he's still drinking and still revolted by the taste.
Yes, yeah.
Like he's never quite gotten down. Like I should switch brands, but I don't like to leave.
It's true, because he is he's drinking like full glasses of like whiskey or bourbon or whatever. And he's been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah.
And but he doesn't look too bad.
No.
I think he's just like, I love the taste of bourbon.
Yes. I want to mention, when she's walking through the castle, she goes into the dining area.
Yes. Yep.
And there's a jump scare with one tarantula. And I want to point out that tarantula, they got their money's worth with that tarantula because the second story, here I am again.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, the tarantula's in the second story as well, yes.
Eddie, the tarantula.
Yes.
Yeah, or Tito.
Sure.
And the tarantula.
Tito's good.
Yeah, there you go. Tito and the Tarantula, the band that plays in From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, that's where I know him from. Okay.
He's there. He's in 2 segments in this film.
Yep.
So, she shows up. Vincent Price, Locke, he is in a bad state. I don't think it has anything to do with the alcohol. I think he's just in a bad state.
Yeah.
But his wife passed away is what he informs her because as we find out, Lenora Locke is Vincent Price's daughter, who he says he was going to, as a baby, throw her out a window.
Yes.
Because he was in such despair. Because if I'm not mistaken, Morella died in childbirth.
Yes. Well, no, she died a couple months after she was born.
During a party.
Well, and the funny thing there is Vincent Price was telling the story about that, and he said in this cadence, he said she just had to have this party.
Yes, yeah.
So he blames the daughter and the wife.
Yeah.
He's not taking any blame for any of this. He's not trying to be helpful in any way.
This is not my problem.
Yes, everything's happening to me.
You showed up and you ruined this. You ruined this for me.
Yes.
But they kind of, I guess they kind of make up.
Yes.
And then there's a nice scene where they're just having dinner together, and I think that's where he's like, yes, this party killed, Morella.
Yes.
And she's dead.
Yes.
But otherwise, he seems like a fairly affable, sweet man.
Yes.
So you're kind of like, why is this a gothic thriller? Is this what's going on here? Because he seems too nice to be like, he's not controlled by his vices, or he doesn't have some dark guilt or sin behind him.
Yes.
So this then escalates fairly quickly. I think this is a fairly short segment too, because
before you go on, I want to point out that at one point during the dinner scene, when they're kind of getting to know each other a little bit better, she makes the comment that the daughter, Lenora says
Lenora Locke,
she was in a lot of relationships with men, and then she was very upset about that. She said that she couldn't give. And my question on that is, what were men interested in back then? Like, it's like you can have a beautiful woman to be with, but if they can't give you a child, it's bad.
I get that must be. I know it was definitely relevant in like the times of kings and in medieval Europe, let's say.
Yes.
If they couldn't rear a child or have a child, then they were no good, because the idea is, I'm going to live till I'm 35. I need a kid to take this over.
Yeah.
And that goes into the old ideas of power and how you maintain power is by having a lineage, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess in Victorian Europe, that sensibility must still be a thing.
Yeah.
I think even is that Jane Austen who writes a lot about that. In that she was able women finding independence from men, more or less.
Sure.
And because mostly women were just, they were meant to just go find a man and marry them. Yeah. And that, so I think a lot of her characters were, very strong-headed, strong-willed women who, didn't need no man or whatever.
Sure.
Which, I think is, that's, this seems to be almost a central, conflict of this particular segment, is that child rearing in general.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was that Morella had the baby and maybe it ruined parties for her.
I'm not sure what he was getting at there.
Lenora ruined her ability to go hang out and be a socialite, which I think is odd because they're rich and they would just have, a caretaker. Right. That's not necessarily explained. But so this goes on where Lenora just goes to bed, and then, we didn't talk about, Lenora finds Morella's body is just decaying and laying in a bed, and Vincent Price is like, I didn't have it in me to bury her.
Yeah.
So obviously a lovelorn man.
And it looked like they did a little film layering to make that effect too. It was kind of it was an effective way to do it.
I was going to say that's a really good point too. Is that we're kind of joking, but this movie looks really good.
Oh, one of the notes I made was the set design was awesome. When the water's crashing on the waves, and they show the castle, and you can see the castle is superimposed, but as far as gothic scenery,
it's so good.
So good. Yeah.
And when it kicks off, in listening to the trailer, it kicks off. There's thunder, lightning. Waves are crashing.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a huge break. It just looks like an Edgar Allan Poe story.
Absolutely.
I like how you'd imagine it.
Yes.
But so anyway, Lenora goes to bed that evening. I guess I think they've been there for like a day, 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Morella. I don't know how to describe this, but she is an evil black magic woman.
She is a black magic woman.
And so she takes over Lenora's body.
Yes.
And then...
and the ghost effect was very cool.
Yes,
I liked it.
where it was moving through the house.
Yes,
like a
down
wraith
the hallways.
or something.
Yep.
Like a very translucent ring wraith from Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
So she arrives, more or less, Vincent Price freaks out because Lenora dies in her bed, and then he covers her head with a blanket, and then the blanket, I think Morella, after she has assumed Lenora's body, pulls the blanket back, revealing that, hey, it's me.
Yes.
It's me, your dead lover.
Yes.
And then begins to choke the shit out of Vincent Price.
Yes.
As the house catches on fire. Because he goes to run, right?
He drops a candelabra, and it... somehow he drops the candle. I can walk past the candle and it goes out, but he dropped the candle by some drapes, bursts the bed drapery on fire.
That old-timey Victorian bed drapery.
And the thing about this story, upon rewatching, that kind of confuses me is Morella she's back for her revenge. Is she mad at Vincent Price for knocking her up? I don't understand.
I have to assume.
Like, was the party that important to her?
What I should have done is read the short story to kind of give some background. My assumption is that, yes, she was mad for just having to have a child.
Yeah.
Anybody out there listening to that, if you want to send a correction, or if you want to, you can send a correction. But if you've read the short story and you know why this is the case, you can just email me at vintagetalkbag@gmail.com. I'd be glad to read it on a later episode. But for the purposes of the movie, it's not really revealed. Yeah. I'm okay with that. I think that's kind of a part of a gothic thriller, that you don't, not everything is known.
Yes.
The supernatural just happens.
Yes.
This isn't a movie about science.
No. And a lot of the movies of this time ended with a house burning.
Yes, it did. Yeah, or even like Fall of the House of Usher.
Yes.
Or just crumbles.
Yep.
Because incest is bad.
It is. It's
so
not good.
Don't do it, guys.
Yep.
So that segment pretty much ends with Morella chokes Vincent Price while the house catches on fire, and then it's revealed after Vincent Price dies that Morella has left Lenora's body, and they're both kind of laying in a burning room, dead.
Yep.
And that is the end of segment 1.
Yes.
Anything you wanted to add to?
No. I mean, he was a pretty depressed guy. Even when Lenora died, he said to her corpse, he said, I envy you.
That's so dark.
He wanted to die. He was drinking that bad booze that he did not like at all.
Adam, I still contend that I don't think it had anything to do with the booze. I think he just liked the flavor.
It could have been just iced tea, for all we know.
It could have been.
Maybe he didn't like it.
He's just like, it's unsweetened.
Yep.
This should have been sweetened.
I ordered Arnold Palmer's.
So that ends the first segment. And we can talk about how we liked each segment in each section of the Tales of Terror in the third segment.
Sure.
But moving on, we get into the Black Cat.
Yes.
And this stars Peter Lorre and Joyce Jameson.
Yes.
And then and Vincent Price. Let's see. Peter Lorre plays Montresor Herringbone. Joyce Jameson plays Annabelle, and Vincent Price plays one of the greatest names, maybe in fiction and in movie, Fortunato Lucrezi.
Lucrezi.
Or Lucrezi.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Fortunato is what I was focusing on.
Yeah.
Fortunato is such a good name.
Yes.
So Peter Lorre is a really just despicable, angry drunk. getting back to the booze of this movie.
His character's all over the place.
Booze news.
Yeah. he's so strange.
He is. He wakes up. He's angry.
Yep.
He's seeing things.
These visions. Yeah.
Yes, he's having these. He wakes up, I think, immediately and sees a snake in his bed.
Yes.
And then it's like, get out of here.
Yeah.
And then he gets up and just starts verbally abusing his wife.
Wants some money.
Give me my money.
Yeah.
Where's my money? Which is very reminiscent of. I immediately thought of
Old Dirty Bastard.
Yeah, well, yeah. I was thinking the Stephen King George Romero film. Creep Show. Where's my cake?
Oh, my cake.
So he's, where's my money? And it's my money and I need it now.
Yes,
And then he's storming around the house looking for money because he wants to go drink.
Yes.
Annabelle, Joyce Jameson is not giving him money. And then he leaves the house and then goes to his local pub, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he goes. Are you talking about the wine vendor?
Not that leaving Joyce Jameson, Annabelle. He goes right to the pub, starts drinking.
Yep.
This segment's really good at establishing who Peter Lorre's character is.
Yes. And he really, I have to say, even though this is a dark comedy section, Peter Lorre, you believe he is a drunk. Mm-hmm. He plays this character very, very well.
He is. He's like sweaty. He looks disheveled.
Yes.
He does. Yeah, really well. But you can also tell that when he gets around the public, he's like this. Oh, somebody else is paying my way. Yes. Everyone, drink on me. Yep. We're getting drunk. Yep. I found my money.
Yep.
And then so he gets plastered.
He gets thrown out of the bar.
Or he gets thrown out of the bar. That's right.
Yes.
Plastered, probably.
Oh, for sure.
And then finds his way to a wine tasting event.
Like it's a convention.
Like a convention. Yes. And he opens the door and he's like, I'm here for wine.
Yes. Oh, and look at all these wonderful gentlemen.
Yes.
And he's looking at the bottles of wine.
Yes. And he's like, this is great. He then disrespects Fortunato, Vincent Price.
Who, and by the way, his introduction is he's facing away from the camera and the dandy fop who introduces him says, Fortunato Lucrezi, and he spins around. And it's
magnificent,
fantastic.
It's so
it really is.
His introduction is great, and Vincent Price is like the through line.
Yep.
We'll have to talk about it in segment 3. Just him in this movie is just great. But so he gets insulted by Peter Lorre's character Herringbone.
Yes.
Herringbone Peter Lorre challenges Vincent Price to a wine drink-off.
Who can determine what date and what style of wine they're drinking.
Yes, and the one thing I was going to touch on, I don't know
the vintage, I guess.
Yes, I've got a thing I can play here. Let's talk about this, and then I've got a section here. I've got Roger Corman, the producer, talking about this particular section. Great. So they get into the drink off. Vincent Price's acting chops go full force here. Fantastic. He is facially doing things that are just hilarious, but also like you can tell this is a very pretentious man who loves his wine.
Absolutely.
He's doing like this. He's puckering his lips so he can breathe in and breathe out. There's a method. I don't know what the name of that is.
He's got his little spoon cup.
Yes.
That he receives the wine in.
Is it snifter?
It could be. I know of a brandy snifter.
Okay.
But this thing it looked like a very intricate measuring cup.
Yes.
And he had a candle next to him where he would look at the clarity.
Yes.
He'd drink it in. He'd suck the air in.
And there was something. Isn't there something about fire bringing out the aroma or something?
The aroma.
The aroma.
Yes.
And then so he's doing all of this and he's tasting it and he's like vintage 19. Okay, this is actually getting into Orson Welles territory, but vintage 19 or 1820 something.
Yeah.
From this particular vineyard, and they're like, "That's correct."
Yeah.
We get over to Peter Lorre,
and the first time, huge applause for Lucrezi guessing the right wine.
Yep.
Right wine.
And then it gets to Peter Lorre, and he just slams this. He offers his glass to the wine pourer. The guy pours an entire glass of wine, and then while the guy's pouring the wine, Peter Lorre's like, "More, don't be stingy," and then slams the glass of wine. And everybody's just kind of stunned, and they're like, "What? This drunk a-hole who stormed in here?" And then he nails exactly what the wine is.
Yeah, and then he delivers his line of "It's very good."
Yes, it's very.
And one of the great comic beats of this movie is after he slams the wine, "It's very good." there's a smattering of very reluctant applause.
One guy is just like, that was cool.
Yeah, the comedy in this movie, especially in this particular section, a lot of times the 50s, 60s comedy falls flat. I feel like this specific episode, the comedy is pretty
it's good, and it's good. And I think having Peter Lorre there is definitely
absolutely
beneficial.
Yeah.
But Vincent Price's comedic timing is really great.
Him looking stunned at how disheveled this man is priceless.
I'm really interested in I want to go find other, like, there's got to be some comedies out there starring Vincent Price, like Comedy of Terrors.
Comedy of Terrors.
Okay, that's what I was thinking of, because I was looking at that. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure he's got some funny stuff in there. So let me play this Roger Corman thing real quick, and then we'll get into the rest of the Black Cat.
This is Roger Corman, and this is Trailers from Hell. We're talking about Tales of Terror, a trilogy from Edgar Allan Poe that I directed. Tales of Terror was late in my series of Edgar Allan Poe pictures. Dick Matheson had written all of the pictures except one, which was written by Charles Beaumont. Dick and I felt that we had used most of Poe's major stories, and that as we got deeper into the series, we were starting to deal with very, very short stories. They were almost fragments. And the way to make the next picture in the series was to make it a trilogy. The first was The Black Cat with Vincent Price and Peter Lorre. We decided to make it as a comedy. I had had certain theories about the connection between horror and comedy and sex, and we thought we would vary our traditional horror sequence with the comedy. The one scene I remember best in The Black Cat was a wine tasting scene where Vincent Price and Peter Lorre are competing as to who has the greatest knowledge of wine. Vincent was the great wine connoisseur. Peter was a drunk. And they drank until they both were drunk, and they stumbled off as equals. I always thought that was one of the best of the sequences in the Poe pictures. The other two of the trilogy were Morella. Vincent had been married to Morella, who died. He married a new wife, and the ghost of the old wife came back to haunt him. The sequences of the haunting, I think, turned out very well. The third was a very obscure story, The Facts in the Case of Monsieur Valdemar. Also interesting in Valdemar was the goo on Vincent's face at the end as he descended deeper and deeper into death. It was one of the most interesting and actually to shoot funniest scenes, because Vincent kept saying, "How much more goo are you going to put on me?"
Okay, so that was Roger Corman, the unassuming Roger Corman, talking about the Tales of Terror, and specifically this segment, The Black Cat. And then there was a black cat, and it was cool. I thought it was great.
You know, Corman says something there that kind of answers a question for me. I have a note here that says, how in the sweet fuck did Vincent Price get the job of taking Montresor home?
Yeah,
he was the vaunted wine expert.
Yeah.
It's like, by the way, could you drive him home? It's like, jeepers creepers.
I have to assume, just knowing like Peter Lorre's character there, that he was just like got drunk and was buddying up.
Oh yeah,
for so great. For sure. You have money.
Yeah.
So Vincent Price takes Peter Lorre home because Vincent Price doesn't seem to be worse for wear, but Peter Lorre is wasted. Peter Lorre has Vincent Price come into his home, meets Annabelle, and then Peter Lorre falls asleep. Vincent Price and Annabelle, was it Jameson? Now I can't think of her name. Joyce
Jameson, yeah.
Joyce Jameson. So Vincent Price meets Annabelle, and then he and Annabelle fall in love.
Yes.
And that makes Peter Lorre the cuckold of
the unknowing cuck.
Yes, the unknowing cuck. And then eventually he figures it out. He goes to the bar one night, comes home early. Vincent Price is leaving, and Peter Lorre watches Vincent Price leave Annabelle from their home. And he goes, I will not be a cuckold. And then
I want to make the point here, though, that this is why Peter Lorre's character is so confusing to me. All he wants is money to drink. Mm-hmm. So then his wife gives him all the money he wants to drink. And then he figures it out that Vincent Price is stooping his wife.
Right.
So, I mean, but all he wants to do is drink. So, I mean, honestly, why would he even be jealous? I mean, there is a point where Whiskey Dick turns into like just some.
I assume permanent whiskey.
Yeah, like he has no reverence for this lady at all.
No.
And what is there? At one point she says he used to be so romantic. Really? Yeah. I want to see. I think the prequel to this movie would be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, the Red Rose instead of the Black Cat.
Yes.
And Joyce Jameson really is like Hitchcockian beautiful blonde.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
She's a very attractive lady. So it makes sense if Vincent Price is like, you are the whatever the I forget the expression. You are the subject of my desire.
Yes.
Peter Lorre obviously gets pissed off, invites Vincent Price over to his house to try some new wine or try some wine that he has.
Yes.
And then he in one of my favorite, it's comedic only in how unintentional I think this comedic moment is. Peter Lorre is like pouring Vincent Price some wine and then gives him a glass, and then he's just like, enjoy this delicious a glass of wine. And Vincent Price is like, oh, thank you. And then under his breath he's like, because it's going to be the last one.
Yes.
And then Vincent Price is like, what was that you said? And he's like, oh, nothing.
Yeah.
And he's like, just enjoy, because you're not going to enjoy anything else after this. And he's like, oh, what was that?
I think that was very intentional. I think it was. And there's a scene there too, and I caught it on this viewing, but right before he gets the glass of wine from Peter Lorre in that scene, he picks the cat up, but he almost like grabs it. No,
Peter Lorre does.
Vincent Price does. He picks it up and almost throws it up in the air and catches it. And he's so happy because he's been banging this guy's wife, and he's like, now I'm drinking his wine.
Oh yeah,
and even when he tastes the sherry, he's still doing the same breathe in technique. He's so up his own ass.
He is so. I was gonna say so up his own ass.
Absolutely.
And so Peter Lorre has spiked his wine with some kind of sleeping toxin. Vincent Price passes out. When he wakes up, he is being like the cask of Amontillado.
Yep.
Oh, and I should point out for any Simpsons fans, the Peter Lorre whispering under his breath just reminded me of that gangster from the one episode who was he was on the phone with somebody, and then he hangs up the phone and he's like, oh crap, I said the loud part quiet and the quiet, or I shouldn't have said that. But it also reminded me of Krusty the Clown saying something like, he's just saying like, oh yeah, he's like, oh yeah, this is all gonna be well and good because we're making lots of money. And then he's like, oh, I just said the loud part quiet and the quiet part loud. It reminded me of that like right off the bat. But so Vincent Price wakes up and he's like the cask of Amontillado. He's being imprisoned he's being, I guess, brick by brick stoned into Peter Lorre's basement wall.
Yes.
It's revealed that Annabelle has been knocked out as well and is also chained behind the wall.
She's
with
dead.
him. Oh, she's dead.
He's killed her. Yes.
So he's killed her. So Vincent Price. Oh, even darker is just being entombed.
Yes.
In his basement with his the dead wife of Peter Lorre. We kind of see the black cat noodling around during the scene, and then he bricks it up, and then eventually Peter Lorre again goes to the pub. Because now he has the inheritance, or what he has the money from Annabelle, and he's getting drunk, and then he's at the bar. And he says something, they're like, he's like, and cheers to my wife Annabelle.
She made
making this possible.
Yep.
And then very quietly, he's like, she's never going to need the money again.
But everyone in the bar hears him.
Yes, and the bartender's kind of like leaning in. He's like, what was that?
Yeah, they're all like, what?
Smash cut to Peter Lorre wakes up. He has another vision, and then the cops are.
Oh no! Before that, we got to talk about the dream sequence.
Oh yes, okay. So yeah, there was which reminded me actually just watching the both the trailer and Roger Corman's kind of talking about the segment. there's lots of cool visuals, which again we can touch on in the third segment. But there's like this. Is this where they're like the camera's squished?
Yes.
Yeah. So very practical visuals that you would never, ever see in a modern film.
Yes.
That's so effective.
Creepy as hell the way they look. Yes. His arms, both of their arms as they're throwing Peter Lorre's head back and forth looks so unnatural.
Yeah, the dream sequence is Peter Lorre goes to the basement and finds that Vincent Price and Annabelle are alive, or Joyce Jameson, they're alive, and they tear off his head, or they
tear his head off.
And they start throwing it back and forth. As he's walking down the stairs, so there's like this squished camera effect that I think is just so effective as he's going. And it's just, it's I guess the word is, and brought up during the Orc episode, Katzenjammer, which is the feeling of disorientation, typically attributed to being hungover.
Yeah.
And so it really nails that effect.
Yes.
Because then he gets down to the basement and he sees Vincent Price. They're like ghoulish. Both Annabelle and Vincent Price, or Joyce Jameson and Vincent Price. And so they tear off his head and they begin to throw it around. And then he wakes up and the cops have showed up. The Bobbies are there.
Yes.
Without really, no need to explain. They figure out that there is two corpses in the basement.
Yes.
Because Peter Lorre is very bad at hiding it.
Yes.
And then what they figured out is that Peter Lorre has accidentally entombed the black cat with the two corpses.
Yes.
Thus revealing, because they hear the black cat behind the wall.
Yeah. And the cops wearing the capes and the top hats. Holy moly. Just, yeah.
Yeah, it's that even the whole ending. I'm familiar from having read The Cask of Amontillado and The Black Cat, which I think we could talk about. I guess we can talk about that in the last segment. But effective the way they did that.
Yes.
I think it's such a delightfully. I said ghoulish before, but it's such a delightfully ghoulish story.
Yes,
and
it hits so many good notes, dark notes, funny notes. The story progresses well. It's a good story.
Yeah, and it's effectively treated with comedy and horror.
Yes.
And it just does exactly what its aim is wonderfully.
Yes.
So that ends the Black Cat episode, and then we come up to what I thought the Black Cat episode was going to be my favorite, but I think this segment turned out to be my favorite.
Yeah.
The final one, and I have to...
It is the case of Monsieur Valdemar.
Okay. So Monsieur Valdemar, played by Vincent Price, is an old man who's dying. He's actually like just as charming as he was in Morello.
I think he's way more.
Oh, for sure. But he's got that same kind of Vincent Price charm.
It's very grandfatherly.
Yes.
He's a good guy, and he is really cool with dying.
He is, yeah. He's like, I don't want any more. There isn't anything else I can do.
Yes.
He's dying. He has a hypnotherapist that his wife, because he's married to her, correct? They are married.
Yes. Okay. Very young wife.
Yes, very young wife. Played by, let me pull this up, because then I had to, somebody inform me that she does a snake dance in a film where I was like, I told my wife and child to leave the room because I was like, oh my Lord, this is titillating. But so we have M. Valdemar, played by Valdemar, played by Vincent Price.
And I was thinking you could have a drinking game every time Basil Rathbone said Valdemar.
Yes, he does. Yeah, he says it enough. Not enough for me to remember what his name was, but enough. So his hypnotist, Mr. Carmichael, who's played by Basil Rathbone, excellent. I'm not even that familiar with. I'm not even familiar with that. With Basil Rathbone and I think I texted you while I was watching it. And I'm like, oh, we should do like a Sherlock Holmes movie.
Yeah,
because he's fantastic. He's such an incredible a-hole. It's awesome.
I have down here. Rathbone is positively sinister.
He really is. He's a monster. He's terrible. So his wife is played by Debra Paget. And she loves him. Vincent Price loves her. And he tells her that there is the other suitor is Valdemar's physician, David Frankham, who Valdemar pretty much gives the okay for him to marry Debra Paget after he's died. Considering Vincent Price is just a nice guy in this, or just whatever, he just wants to see her happy. So he's like, yes, it's okay. You can marry somebody after I die.
He's playing matchmaker on his deathbed.
And yes, and Debra Paget hates the hypnotherapist, and she explains that to him before he dies. That she's like, oh, he controls your actions, and he's a monster.
Yes.
He shows up, and he's a monster.
Yes.
In a very cool scene, he sets up the hypnotherapy device before Vincent Price expires, and it's this cool multi-technicolored. It looks like something right out of the 60s. It's so like it's so neat. It's like the steampunk contraption without the steam. What happens is Carmichael winds up. He hypnotizes Vincent Price just as he's dying. So Vincent Price's body begins to die, but his spirit and his psyche or his will is stuck in the living world, and his body is decaying. And it's like horrifying. I mean, just the thought of, I'm not familiar with the short story, but just like watching the movie, I'm like, what an awful idea. Like what a terrifying idea to be trapped. And so his body begins to decay. Debra Paget's, freaking out because she's like, she wants Carmichael to end it and to stop, but Carmichael's like, part of it is Carmichael wants to marry Debra Paget. And the other part is that he's kind of mesmerized that he was able to do it.
Absolutely.
And he's like, no, I have to keep this going for medical science, even though I'm a hypnotherapist. Sure. I have to see this through. He then uses his hypnotherapist ability to get Vincent Price in a pretty funny scene. He gets both Debra Paget and David Frankham to come into the room, and he's like, look, see what he's doing? See? And then he goes, he's like, Valdemar, tell them what you just told me. And then Vincent Price is like, it's okay, you can marry or
marry the baddie.
Yes. Marry Carmichael. Speaking to Debra Paget, marry her instead of David Frankham, and they're both like, no, you just made him say that. And he's like, no, that's what he said. That's why he said it, not me. This obviously ends badly because Vincent Price comes back to life. And murders Carmichael. In a scene that is disgusting. As his body begins to turn to goo, and he begins to decay, and I believe Valdemar just dies of fright. With Vincent Corpse's rotting Price. on top of him. And did you have something you wanted to add to that particular segment?
I wanted to point out that Basil Rathbone, after he has Vincent Price under the spell, they cut to him later doing some work, and he's got the most fabulous red blazer on. I wanted to point out that Vincent Price was wearing ruffles on his deathbed.
And that's that. And good point. That's that through line, because I'm trying to think. There's another scene in The Black Cat where that red becomes very prominent again. And that Rathbone red blazer it's so distinct. It's very like M. Night Shyamalan, that. Oh yeah, here's a bad color. Like these are all like telling us something. And I think like the visuals of that are so like acute, just perfect, like just well done. So then, and then that like ends the segment. We end with Vincent Price just saying, I hope you all had your tales of terror, read to you by me.
And the last text on the screen of that story, it says there's a blurb, but the term liquid putrescence is used. How if that's not a band for a metal band or a name for a metal band, I don't know.
Liquid putrescence. There's great. There's lots of great dialogue. And lots of great little quotes here and there throughout it. Basil
Rathbone definitely makes that story. He is fantastic.
For sure. He is. Yeah, he's just an evil bad. He's an evil bad guy.
He's an evil bad. Yes.
So that wraps up Tales of Terror, the synopsis.
And the screenplay for that movie was by Richard Matheson.
Yes, and that's actually going to. So we're going to do a second film for this month toward the tail end of. I guess it would be for April. It's Vincent Price heavy, but it's also Richard Matheson heavy. I think a writer that we're both fond of. So it's definitely cool to see that he had some, and it also explains why the stories are so good. And even like The Black Cat being like, okay, I've read this a bunch. I know I'm familiar with this. I'm familiar with the Cask of Amontillado. It makes sense to me that these are just very well done and well executed in just at least the writing portion of it. So, so we're just coming up on a break, and when we return, we're going to be playing a trivia game with our guest. So we will be right back. We're just coming back from a break. For this next section, Adam, I thought I would offer an opportunity for the audience and for yourself to learn a little bit of trivia about this film. And, obviously one we watched. So by putting you through the Vintage Talkbag trivia game, let's play the theme. Adam, this is a 5-question multiple-choice trivia game. featuring trivia about the 1962 film Tales of Terror. You already said I, so you're ready to play and test your knowledge about this Vincent Price classic. Question 1. How much did Tales of Terror make at the box office? It's multiple choice. Was it A, 1 million, B, 500,000, C, 1.5 million, or D, 256,000?
I'm going to say 500,000.
Your rationale being that it's just a low-budget horror film?
With inflation, I'm not really sure. I'm sure $500,000 was a lot more. Obviously it was a lot more back then. So I'm going to go with that.
Adam, you are incorrect.
Oh, shit.
It was C, 1.5 million.
Oh, well.
Actually, it did well.
I can see why it would do
I'd say
well.
that was my thought. Maybe just right place at the right time.
It's an amazing popcorn movie.
It really is. Yeah. It's it works in so many ways. Question 2. The music was composed by American musician Les Baxter, who is notable for creating a style of music called exotica, which prominently featured in a lot of gothic horror films. What other notable horror film from the following did he compose music for? Was it A, The Incredible Shrinking Man? Was it B, X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes? C, The Abominable Dr. Phibes? Or D, The Alligator People? This one is definitely tricky because each one has haunting scores.
What was the second choice?
X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes,
with Ray Milland. Fantastic movie.
Oh, great movie.
I'm going to go with X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes.
Adam, you are correct. It was X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes. Great finale on that movie.
Oh, haunting last night.
It really is. You know what? A piece of trivia, and I think I read this in Dance Macabre by Stephen King. Is that originally, so he, at the end of X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, he tears out his own eyes, more or less, and then it ends on just his still face with his missing eyes.
And originally...
Yes, that's the piece of trivia.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I can still see.
Yes, he says, I can still see.
Yes.
But it was, and this is lore, so however accurate this may be, this is just a story that's been relayed, that he screams, I can still see. And it was just deemed so dark that the studios wanted nothing to do with it.
Dark.
It's such a dark. All right, question 3. Tales of Terror is the 4th out of 8 films that appeared in the Corman Poe, anthology of films, or Corman Poe films altogether. All of the following appear in that series of films except for A, House of Usher, B, The Pit and the Pendulum, C, The Mask of the Red Death, or D, The Telltale Heart?
Ooh, I'm going to have to go with Telltale Heart.
Adam, you are correct. It was Telltale Heart.
Those other 3, I don't think I've ever seen The Telltale Heart. The other 3, I'm very familiar.
That's what I was going to bring up. Is I don't know that is there a faithful adaptation of?
There's a lot of adaptations.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know if Corman ever directed one.
Yeah,
Even this movie. I mean, there's a lot of. There's Cask of Amontillado and Black Cat within the story of the Black Cat. So they kind of jump around. Yeah.
All right, question 4. This film was written by Richard Matheson, who also wrote 16 episodes for the 1959 Twilight Zone television series. He wrote all of the following episodes except A, Third from the Sun, B, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, or C, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, or D, Steel. Adam, that's incorrect. Richard Matheson actually wrote a short story called Steel.
Oh, wow.
The answer is B, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, which I believe was part of the first run of Twilight Zone, written by Rod Serling.
Oh, well, damn.
Yep. Question 5, the final question. I don't know. Let me see. You have 2 out of 5.
What am I going to win?
We'll talk about it. I have a Richard Matheson plush, but it actually just looks like Rob Reiner. So
is it a Rob Reiner plush?
It's a Rob Reiner plush.
Okay, you can keep it.
They actually sound the same too. When you listen to interviews with Rob Reiner and Richard Matheson, I'm like, are you the same guy?
Right.
Question 5. During the filming of Tales of Terror, Peter Lorre was uncomfortable with which of the following activities? A, walking near the black cat. B, uttering the name Morella while people were on set. C, engaging in a game of toss with this fake prosthetic head. Or D, attempts by the cast and crew to hypnotize each other.
I am going to I guess I would go the tossing of the head that looks like his head.
Adam, you're correct.
Well, that's just a
he
shot.
Was just uncomfortable with watching people throw his head around.
All right. I thought it seems like a very eccentric thing.
Doesn't it?
Like he seems like an eccentric guy.
I was thinking I thought it'd be funny just to see Vincent Price trying to hypnotize somebody on set. You will go get my coffee,
or just some gaffes.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty good at hypnotism.
Where's that best boy grip? He needs to get my lunch. I'll hypnotize you. Okay, well that ends the trivia segment, Adam. I believe you have 3 out of 5.
Nice.
So much better than last time, where there was a completely unstructured game.
Yes.
And meant for 2 people. So
yes.
yeah, the multiple choice seems to be working well.
Yes.
Audience at home, I hope you had fun.
There was 100% less of your wife humiliating me.
And she was doing as well as you were. So
doing the dishes and just scoring on me.
Okay, we are just coming up on a break. When we return, we'll be rating the 1962 film Tales of Terror with the Vintage Talk Bag 5-star rating system. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to the Vintage Talk Bag. I'm your host, Josh. I'm sitting here with my brother, Adam. And
Hi.
Today on the podcast, we are reviewing the 1962 film Tales of Terror. And in this segment, we're going to break down our thoughts about that film using the Vintage Talk Bag 5-star rating system, an objective rubric that is comprised of 5 stars, each of which has an ascribed quality, which include writing, acting, sight, sound, and recommend. We will then rate each quality by either giving it 0, 1/2, or 1 full star. Lastly, we will use the aggregate number of stars to give a final star rating out of 5 stars. If that's still a little confusing, I have an image of it posted on www.thevintagetalkbag.com. So I guess we can, however we want to do this. If you want to start with, I figure we'll just go writing, acting, sight, sound, recommend.
Sounds good.
I don't know if you want to start with writing, or I can start with writing. It doesn't really matter.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so Tales of Terror. I suspended putting down my score until we kind of talked about it because it could go back and forth. So I think we touched on it a little bit. Richard Matheson's a fantastic writer. I think Roger Corman as being producer, and he directs too. But I think it moves through each story in a very organic way. I think dealing with the source material of that kind of gothic horror. You've got Morello. It's a slow start, but I think that's a perfect way to start the film, and I think that story is told really well, even though it's got a few holes here and there. I think it's a really good, well-written, like gothic story, especially for screen. A good adaptation. The Black Cat is maybe one of the finest anthology segments. That also goes, I guess, into some acting, but I think it's written really well, and it includes other source material. And then, like I said, just the final segment just turned out was a surprise to me, that I was like, wow, this is really cool. I like all the characters. I think the characters are well written. When they're evil, they're evil. When I was talking about Vincent Price coming off as a really nice guy in Morello, that doesn't have to happen. He could have just been an evil dude. I think in combination with the acting of Vincent Price, but he's a well-written character. There are those weird things where it's like, oh, the party, and I was going to throw this baby, and it's like these nice little things that the writer included to kind of build the character, and I think your sympathetic characters are very sympathetic. So I'm going to go a full star on the writing for Tales of Terror.
As far as I'm concerned with this movie, breaking it down, Morella is, I think that's the weakest of the stories. However, set design-wise, I shouldn't say that yet, but writing-wise, the writing in this movie, it's good, but you have to suspend the notion it's not a contemporary movie.
Right.
So it's going to be dramatic in parts.
Yeah. I should say too, just keep in mind, and for the audience at home, if you're kind of like, oh, I too want to use this Vintage Talk Bag 5-star rating system, the recommend, the last star recommend is kind of the catch-all. So if there's something else, if there's set design, or we can use sight, but if there's other things that you wanted to talk about, you can save them for recommend. Yeah. But go ahead.
But also, you said before that if anybody uses the 5-star rating system, that you'll sue them. You're very litigious.
We weren't supposed to talk about that. That's something I wanted to keep quiet, but yes, I'm like Disney.
It's very much so. No, I think the writing in all of the stories is I talked about this with Black Sabbath. It's a different time, and I really dig this type of dialogue.
Sure.
I didn't realize that Richard Matheson did the screenplay. It does make sense now. I would also give it one complete star for this for the writing on Tales of Terror. I think that the dialogue never bores me. It's I don't know. It very much catches the gothic feel that you're looking for.
Yeah, you were touching on something too that I neglected to talk about was the dialogue is great.
Yeah,
the Fortunato and Herringbone. All of those are all of that. The interacting between those two is it's great.
Yes,
it's well written.
Rathbone in Valdemar is he's everything. He's just every time he's speaking in that story it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's really good.
And one thing we're going to have to talk about at some point, and maybe we'll do it we'll just have to pick a movie and kind of maybe have this discussion, is that you were touching on that yes, this is an older movie, and for its time, we have to be late with it. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah.
Because I think there are older movies, and one that we're going to talk about for the end of April. I think there are some older movies that can stand toe-to-toe with modern films. You know what I mean?
I agree 100%.
So kind of giving it a break, because even here, I didn't feel any necessity to really give it a break. Give it a break for being an older film, because I think it's just so well done.
It's not that I'm giving it a break for being an older film. I feel like I'm doing that for people who haven't seen the movie, who are not. If you're a younger listener to this podcast, you may not be used, or actually, if you're a listener to this podcast, you probably do listen to these things or watch these things all the time. But there's people that I will recommend movies to, and I make that I'll say, hey, just stick with the dialogue, but no, it's very good stuff. It's just if you're not used to watching these type of movies, then it might be. I
guess I hadn't really considered that, because I guess having like younger listeners that'll go, oh well, this movie looks like crap, I'm not going to get into this. So maybe you're right in that you do have to alleviate somewhat.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe the thing is, don't go into the film with some kind of presupposition that if there isn't like a car exploding every 5 minutes, then it's not.
I feel like you're missing out if you're not giving these movies a chance.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Because otherwise you're missing out on some really great.
Yep.
Just Black Sabbath alone, I think, and talking about that, I'm like, I'm so glad that you had recommended that, because it's now, as I'd mentioned last time, and this one as well, it's going to go into my fall rotation.
Yeah.
Because it's a great popcorn movie.
Sets the tone. Yeah.
It really does.
Yep.
So getting into acting, do you want to start with acting?
Sure. The acting in this movie is, I would say, it's borderline over the top. But again, I enjoy that in these types of movies.
Yeah.
It's
theatric, maybe.
Yeah. There's a scene. No, I'm thinking of the other movie. Especially with the second and honestly, all the stories within this movie, they're all done in a way where they're getting their message across. It is a little over dramatic in some parts, but again, I think for what this movie is and what it's trying to do, I think it's spot on. I would give it another full star.
Another full star from Adam. And it's going to be another full star for me. I think I agree. I think Peter Lorre is amazing. Basil Rathbone makes that segment. Peter Lorre makes the second one. Vincent Price makes the first one. Yep. Whether he's slamming whiskey or bourbon or whatever it is, he's just and I don't know. I've touched on it a few times, but I don't know what it is exactly. But he comes off. He's supposed to be this evil gothic character, but he does come off charming in his own Vincent Price way, and it's nice to see that.
Yes.
But Debra Paget is great as just having to deal with that crisis and being being upset. Obviously, there's some and in talking about giving the movie a break, there's of its time, these kind of gothic stories, the woman is always in distress, or she's the ire of somebody, and must punish for being must be punished for being a woman, which sucks.
For sure.
But I think Joyce Jameson, Debra Paget, and who
I'm not sure. The third one I was going to say,
well, that's Debra Paget.
Oh,
I'm trying to think who played Annabelle. Joyce Jameson. Oh no, Joyce Jameson was Annabelle. I'm trying to think who was
the Lenora character in the first one.
Yes, that's what I keep saying. Annabelle was Lenora in the first one.
Yes, the lady in the first story and in the second story, the Joyce Jameson character in the second story.
It's Maggie Pierce plays Lenora.
Okay, yeah, Maggie Pierce and Joyce Jameson, I thought gave very good performances.
Yes, for sure.
The third story, honestly, even Vincent Price is just kind of a part of the set.
Yeah.
In that one, Basil Rathbone in the third story, he's the thing keeping that story together,
absolutely.
But he's fantastic.
Yeah,
he makes up for everything else. I think the doctor and the wife in the third segment, they're kind of just there.
Yeah.
But the other two women in the first one, the 1 and 2 story, very good. Yes.
So I guess I'll start with sight. Oh, and I should say I gave acting 1 star. Adam gave acting 1 star. So for sight, I've got to go 1 star again. And this movie is doing really well, but I think the visuals are excellent. Like I said before, when Maggie Pierce shows up at the Locke estate, everything is it's coated in cobwebs, dusty tapestries, ancient candelabres, however you say that. It's very well done. It's very effective. All the visuals in the black cat, the cat itself. When I was talking about the squished, that kind of squished look during the dream sequence, it's just effective. And then the technicolored hypnotherapist thing is really cool.
Yes.
Vincent Price melting away looks really neat.
Yep.
I keep saying effective, but this movie is very effective.
Yes.
And it brought up Black Sabbath until we watch more anthologies, or review more anthologies. It very reminiscent of how they used color in Black Sabbath to set like an atmosphere and set a tone, and it's just they do a great job. So yeah, I'm gonna go 1 star with sight.
Yes, piggybacking off of your just the way it made things gothically, it's a very aesthetically pleasing look. This movie definitely hits all those marks as far as a scary ghost story look. It's the way that especially the first story, the castle looks. I mean, it looks as much as you would want something to look from a 1960s horror movie. And I agree 100%. I think the set design was really, really good, and I would definitely give it a full star. Yeah,
because when I was thinking, and I'd mentioned it before, but this is the way I assume an Edgar Allan Poe story would look.
Absolutely, yes.
And they do a good job doing that. It was also reminiscent of like Shirley Jackson Hill House.
Yep.
Just in that Southern Gothic tradition.
Yes.
It's all there, and it's visually captured, and it's just done exceptionally well. And I'm just glad Roger Corman was there. It was like, yes, put more things, put more cobwebs on the candelabra, or however you say.
Yes, more fainting couches.
Yes,
we need more fainting couches.
Add some fainting couches, a black cat, and where's Peter Lorre's head so I can toss it to Vincent.
He
Price.
Doesn't like it. Do it more.
Where's that best boy grip so he can get my lunch? I'm going to hypnotize him to do it. So you're going 1 star for sight?
Yes.
Adam, go ahead and take away sound.
Sound, I'm going to go a little lower on sound. I think that the first story encapsulates, as much as I think is that may be the weakest story, I think sight and sound definitely the best. The I don't know what you called it, the Exotica?
Yeah, Exotica.
Yeah, that really came through in that first story. A lot of it sounds like ladies doing singers doing and it really hit home for me. I really liked that. The sound didn't come through so much.
Use that whole tone scale.
In the other two stories, I will say when Valdemar finally descends into death.
Yeah.
At first when Rathbone is talking to Valdemar before he fully is under, his voice is normal, but then when he goes all the way into the limbo state, there's this reverb to his voice that's very creepy.
Yep.
I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go a half star on sound.
Half star and sound from Adam. Yeah, Vincent Price definitely gets into the gurgly. No, I've drank too much and I've locked myself in the cellar again. It's like, no, you're trapped between worlds, Vincent. Oh dear. Yeah, I agree. I think half star for sound makes sense to me in that while I just finding out that it's called Exotica, I think of House of Usher, if you've ever seen House of Usher. And I brought it up. I know I've brought it up before, but one of my favorite moments from that film is Vincent Price poorly playing the lute. Yes, he just has a lute sitting there, and he just starts hitting random notes, and they were like, "Oh, that sounds just creepy. Keep it in." And he's like, "I don't know how to play this." He's like, "No, it's fine." The other thing I believe I remember reading is that Vincent Price. I'm sorry, that would be the other film. Never mind. We've both done it now. Mm-hmm. I think I think the music does enough to set up the atmosphere, but I don't think it's not doing anything. I wouldn't say it's like exceptional. It's setting up this, setting up the scene, and it's formulaic almost. And like you're saying with the whoo, like, that's going to be there, and it's not doing anything out of the norm. So yeah, half star, but again, and using effective again, it's very effective when it's used. Yes. So yeah, I'm going to go half star with that as well. So Adam, would you recommend 1962's Tales of Terror?
I think that if you sit down and watch this movie and you're in a spooky kind of mood, you will be thoroughly spooked, because it is scary where it needs to be. It is funny where it needs to be. The acting of Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, and Basil Rathbone is superior. If you know who those people are, then you're getting exactly what you want in this movie. I highly recommend this movie.
1 star?
1 star, absolutely.
The only thing I would argue against, even if you don't know who these people are, as I'm not familiar with Basil Rathbone and Peter Lorre, I have some passing knowledge of, still just doing a great job. And if you're in the mood, you said it best. It's a great popcorn movie, and if you don't mind like some gothic, really really dark themes and some really dark visuals, if you don't mind those things, then this is like it's not a perfect gothic film, but it has enough going for it that I highly recommend it as well. 1 star. So looking at it, Adam, it looks like we both gave 1962's Tales of Terror 4.5 stars. And I think it's a 4.5 star film. I think it's high quality. I think we ranked Black Sabbath a little lower, which makes sense because I think the segments in that film, there's a few like hit or miss things.
They drug a little bit too.
And this one doesn't really have that issue. I watched it. I watched it in 2 sittings. Mostly, as I said, I was drinking Southern Tier hot cocoa, which turned out to be 10%. And I made it through 2 segments, and then I was
Sounds delicious.
It was delicious, but I made it through 2 segments, and I'm like, I have to go to bed now. And then I woke up and just like in the midday sun watched the 3rd segment, which I was surprised by. So I'm like, oh, so it wasn't just because I was watching it at 11 o'clock at night, and it was and all the lights in the house were out. It was also in broad daylight. I was like, oh, this is also chilling and still just disturbing. Definitely effective in that way. Anything else you wanted to add about Tales of Terror?
No, I mean, I've seen this movie half dozen times, and it's in fact I watched it 3 weeks ago, and then I watched it last night again just to recoup, and I wasn't mad because I watched it again. It's
not a grudge. You don't have to be like, or you're begrudgingly watching it.
It kept my attention. I was smiling through the entire second story.
Really, for listeners at home, just the second segment is so good.
The wine tasting scene is one of my favorite scenes in any movie.
It really is. It's like,
really
it's very good. Like, I'll say it again. It's effective.
It's very good.